Hi. Was having a few technical difficulties this evening, but welcome to another episode of the Jahzara Bradley Effect live show. And tonight is not going to be a regular night. Like, we're not just talking about a book, we're talking about perception, we're talking about control, and we're talking about what happens when the people closest to the story are the ones telling the story. And so, before we go any further, I want to pose a question to you. Do you trust the story or the person telling the story? Because tonight, that difference is really everything. So, let me set the backdrop for you. The year was 2022. And something different happened in the Jahzara universe. It wasn't just another release, it wasn't just another storyline being told, but there was a shift. And the shift was that this book appeared and it was released to the public. And the public was told that it was written by two exes, Ivan Marrick and Nyree Chandler. And if you've been following me, you know who Ivan Marrick and Nyree Chandler are. But if you don't, then I must say I'm a little disappointed in you. The ebook did come out on April the 12th. My Love Won't Last Forever, book 3 in the series, His Wife. So you need to pick it up. So you can definitely know the interactions, the backstory, all of that good stuff related to Ivan and Nyree. But anyways, in 2022, back to the book, they were two exes and they decided to collaborate. And so this isn't really collaboration, even though that's what we called it. It was more positioning. So here's something else I'd like to pose for you to think about. You and your ex sit down. You guys decide that you're going to write a book, and each one of you all are going to tell a story, your story. Are you telling the truth or are you telling your version? So, yeah, let's let that sit there for a minute. Are you telling the truth or are you telling your version? And so that's where it gets interesting with this book. And with that being said, I think it's important before we go any further to clear some things up. And so let me just clear something up. Let me clear this up. Because I think some of you all are still thinking about the book, still approaching the book. I have a copy of it right here. As this is your traditional book, right? And it's not. I don't just write stories and release them into the world. My characters, yeah, they live on the pages of the book, but they live far beyond the pages. They exist beyond that. They have voices, they have opinions. And what some of you may not know, they do have social media. They are on Facebook. You can find Ivan Marrick on Facebook and you can find Nyree Chandler on Facebook. And Tazaya, I'm looking in the chat. She says, my version would be my truth. I love that. Absolutely. And so Ivan Marrick and Nyree, here's the thing. They're not just sitting around quietly in a storyline waiting for me to tell you what they're doing. What I did with typical hood story was I allowed them to be active, I allowed them to be present. And so what you see in typical hood story is Ivan and Nyree deciding for themselves how to tell this story and telling you what happened. So it's not me telling you what happened from their perspective. It's these two characters telling their hood stories. And so that's where really everything changes because you're not reading a story that's filtered through me. I'm not filtering anything. You're watching two people who have history, who have tension, and who have unfinished business choose how they want to be seen, how they want to tell their story. You're seeing on Facebook what they post, what they share, what they admit, and of course, with my characters, what they choose to leave out. And I must say, that's where it gets interesting. I think that's where it gets interesting with people across the board, though. Because when people have control over their own narrative, yeah, this is hard to say, but it's the truth. When they have control over their own narrative, they don't necessarily always tell the truth. So now I need you to think about this even more differently. When Ivan posts, is he telling his story or is he creating an image? And when you see Nyree speaking, is she being honest or is she being intentional? And see, this is where it's not just storytelling anymore. There's this perspective that's in motion. And the real question then becomes if they're both talking, they both have platforms, they both have something to gain, who do you believe? Yeah. So let me read a little to you what Ivan and Nyree say in the beginning of the book, and then we'll get back to the show. So let's see. So in the beginning of the book, you get their perspective. You get a little note from them, and it says a word from the authors. Thank you for taking a chance on a new author. My name is Ivan Marrick, and you will be hearing more about me in the future. Let me pause right there. My boy is bold. He said you will be hearing more about him in the future. Okay, let me go on. This hood story has been in me for a minute. I had to write this story and share it with you. I am not a hood dude, really. Okay, let's pause right here. When somebody says, I'm not a hood dude, really? I don't know how to take that. Are you really one or are you really not one? Because it's kind of like you said it, but then you went back on it. All right, all right. I got into the hood life by circumstances and accident. It was my childhood that launched me into this lifestyle. My dad fall off, I'm sorry, my dad fell off into the drugs and the life as I knew it changed. I blame the changes on Malachi Chandler. I became obsessed with wrecking his family as he had done mine by selling drugs to my father. I was going to befriend him and then stab him in the back, but I found someone to do my dirty work for me. Even still, that was not enough for me, so I became involved with his ex-wife, Nyree. Huh? Okay. At the same time, I appear on the scene with Nyree. Malachi is trying to win her back. That is another story for another time. I fell in love with her. She did not have the same feelings. A lot of drama unraveled, and hence, here I am in jail writing my portion of the book. Bro, that might have been a little too much. Like, I appreciate honesty and transparency, but yeah, I don't know. And here's what Nyree says, and she doesn't have as much to say as Ivan, but she says, my name is Nyree Chandler. I met Ivan when I was trying to decide if I was going to go back to my ex Malachi. I decided to move on with Ivan. All I can say is sometimes the grass is not greener on the other side. Furthermore, trust your instincts. When things were off with Ivan and myself, I listened to my gut, and I am thankful that I did. As Ivan stated, I am grateful for readers taking a chance on a new author like me. Ivan has always been business savvy like me. When he presented the idea of writing a book and sharing our hood stories, I was eager to do so. So there you have Ivan and Nyree's perspective. All right. So back in 2022, the public accepted the book. They accepted it quickly. Here's what they knew. They knew that there were two people who had history, who had tension, and who had shared some experiences together. They also knew that these two people teamed up and decided to profit off of what they've been through. It felt believable, right? That sounds believable. You could roll with that, right? It felt messy enough to be real, but what most people didn't stop to ask is this question right here. Why now? And even more importantly, who benefits from telling it this way? So I need you to answer this honestly. When two people tell the same world differently, do you believe them? Or do you assume one of them is controlling the narrative better? So in this book, you have Nyree and you have Ivan. They're both telling hood stories. They both are from the same place, Gary, Indiana. They're both telling a story. But who are you most likely to believe? They're not telling the same story. They're not even telling the same version of the same incident. They're clearly telling two different stories in the book. But who are you most likely to believe? I just wonder, are you guys more team Ivan or team Nyree? Let's see in the chat. Who do you guys have most of your allegiance to? Nyree or Ivan? Grab a sip of water. Okay. And so as we looked at that note from the authors, you already got there that Ivan, his intentions. We know about his obsession with Malachi Chandler. He admits to inserting himself, into situations. And for Ivan, he's not confused about what he's doing. Ivan is very calculating. Nyree, on the other hand, sounds a bit more reflective. And she's talking about her instincts. She's talking about learning. She sounds like she's grown as a result of the process, as she's evolved. Sounds like maybe she healed. But when I think about Nyree, because what she portrays here and what she projects, that she's healed, she sounds healed. But does sounding healed mean you are healed? I'll let that sit with you. Even as that sits with you, I almost have to wonder, is she healed or does she present better? And as a former therapist, I will tell you, there are some people who present really well, but are some of the people who are most unstable. There's a difference between growth and control. And I'd be curious to know when we wrap up our conversation, do you think Nyree demonstrated growth or control? I'm almost sure most have not read this story, but just based on the discussion I'm having with you, at the end, you can let me know. Tazaya says they are not the same. They are not. Absolutely. There's something that happens in this book, and it happens kind of subtly. You have various themes here. And I know in an ideal world, we love to think that love, ego, pride, and survival, we love to think that all of these things could coexist in the same space. I beg to differ. The reality is, as much as we wish all of these things could coexist, they cannot. What happens is you get all of these elements and there's a collision is what happens. When you have these elements all present, you have somebody who is trying to adjust. You have somebody who's calculating. We already talked about who's calculating. And the truth of the matter is, and people may sit on the edge of their seat when I say this, but this is the truth. And sometimes the truth isn't pretty. Somebody is always losing. Now, when you're in the midst or the company of all of these elements, you always want to be the person and hope that you will be the person who is not on the losing end. But when you have all this chaos going on in a space, somebody's losing. Now, this is fiction, so we don't have to tense up too much. But if you start, just looking under it, under the microscope in real life, I'm not telling you no lie. Somebody is losing. But you know what? We came here for entertainment. So let's move on. So now I want to focus on the Nyree and the Eris dynamic. And so a lot of people, no, let me just start out with what Nyree does in the story, and then I'll work in some of the backstory because I was getting ready to jump in too fast. So, excuse me. Let me do it how Nyree did. And she's really smooth with this. Like, this is something that I think a lot of readers who have read did not pick up on this subtlety, who have read Jahzara books. But if you haven't read the series, then this may not connect for you. But for people who've read the series, you're gonna see in typical Hood story, when Nyree begins to tell her story, she introduces you to a character, Eris Smith. Now you have to pay attention to what Nyree is doing here. She's not just telling you a story, she's revealing a pattern. Eris is not just frustrated, she's escalating. Her background, her experiences, the instability she's been exposed to, all of that shapes how she moves. Now, if you don't know Eris, you would know Eris Smith from my book Contradictions. You would also know her from the book My Love Won't Last Forever Part 2, Chaotic Bliss. So let me get back to Eris as Nyree is presenting it to you. So Nyree presents Eris to you as someone who confuses attention with care. She confuses familiarity with safety. And if we're really being honest, a lot of people do the same thing in real life. So don't judge Eris too harshly. But what I really need you to answer this and answer this honestly is Eris, is she toxic or is she a product of what she's been through? And at what point do you stop explaining your behavior and start taking responsibility for it? And so that's one of the themes with Eris. Eris has had a difficult life. It's been tough for her, but she generally justifies how she moves because of the way she's been brought up, because of life circumstances. Now that I told you all of that, let's connect what most people missed when they read Typical Hood Story. If you've been following the Jahzara universe, you already know what happened in Chaotic Bliss. But if not, let me spill this for you. Eris and Nyree were best friends. Eris ended up sleeping with Nyree's ex-husband, Malachi. And when it happened, Nyree said nothing. There was no confrontation. There was no scene. She just observed. So I'm going to pause right here. So Tazaya says both can be true at once, but at some point you are responsible for how you act. Absolutely. Absolutely. So when Nyree becomes aware that her best friend slept with Malachi, and this isn't a rumor, this isn't something she heard. You'd have to read Chaotic Bliss to see how she found out, which was pretty messed up. As I said, there was nothing from Nyree. There was no confrontation. She didn't cuss anybody out. She didn't go off. And most people saw her behavior as silence. I dare say it wasn't silence, it was timing. Because what Nyree didn't do in the moment, the reaction that we would have expected and probably even understood, what she didn't do in the moment, she did later. She wrote a book. This book, Typical Hood Story. And she told all of Eris's business. Not emotionally, not impulsively, but in a way where it looked like she was just telling a story. She was just presenting this fictional character to you. The whole time, she exposed this woman. So now, I need you to think about what we talked about earlier, that question that I posed to you. Is this healing or is this revenge done so well that it looks like growth? And if you wait to respond to something, are you being strategic or are you delaying what you really wanted to do in the first place? And so that's why I said earlier, one of the questions that people should have been asking when the book came out was why now? Because Nyree didn't do this immediately. Some time went by. And so it just looked like, oh, she's telling a cute little hood story. But that's not what that really was. Okay? So let me talk to you on a more personal level. Would you confront someone in the moment or would you expose them later? And do people become the hood or does the hood create them? If someone profits from telling a story that isn't fully true, is that storytelling or is it manipulation? And at the end of all of this, did Nyree really win? Did she win? Or did she just play the long game? These are things to think about. And this is why I say that typical hood story really hits differently. Ivan is not telling his truth. We already know that. He's telling what benefits him. Nyree is not reacting, she's controlling a narrative. And when you understand that, then you understand this isn't just a book for them. For both of them, this is strategy. And every strategy comes with consequences. And next episode, I think what we're going to talk about is what happens when those consequences come back around. So, if you guys have any questions for me, you can put them in the chat. I'll give you a second in case you have questions or comments. I am curious, are you team Ivan or are you team Nyree? Okay. Well, I have enjoyed sharing with you about Typical Hood Story. I will have links for you to purchase Typical Hood Story. It is in ebook form. It is also in paperback as well on Amazon, Kindle, and it is in ebook form on other digital platforms. So that is that. Tazaya says she is team Nyree. Yeah. I don't get too many people that are team Ivan. I would like to meet some team Ivan people. But yes, this is a very quick read. It is Typical Hood Story, 2 raw and uncut stories. So when I say it is raw because remember, Ivan wrote his from jail. So the editing is not there for Ivan, but Ivan's a pretty good writer. And it is just as it is very raw. So if you are the type that would need to clutch your pearls, let me give you the warning right now. This is not PG-13. So this is not for you. And that's okay because every book is not for everybody. Well, that being said, I am going to say goodnight. You all have an awesomely amazing evening and thank you for tuning in.